Oh, doggy.
Sorry.
Good evening and welcome to the Upset Podcast. This evening we are talking about how Christians treat migrants. Coming up next. Hey, okay. I don't know why I'm hearing this. All right. Good. Okay. Okay, this is weird. Did somebody have this on or something? I'm like, why do I hear myself? All right, everyone. Thanks for being here this Sunday. Okay. Well, we're going to keep moving. And I'm not here by myself because I never do that. Not when I can have these wonderful people right here with me. What is happening? Can you guys hear that?
No, I don't hear anything.
You don't hear an echo?
No.
So I sound like the crazy person?
No, we've been.
It's a normal Sunday.
Just don't answer back.
Yeah.
Don't answer yourself back. Then you fine.
Is there anyone in the room with you, Tasha?
Okay.
I think the best thing for her to do right now is to go out and come back, and we'll get the show on the road.
Let's just hope that the show is not.
This is not an indication. Yes, I'm going to do that because yeah, y'all keep talking, and I'm going to
Migs, take it over. What would she say at this point, like right now? What would she say?
I'm not even sure. But welcome to the Upset Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We are glad that you're able to join us today on this lovely Sunday afternoon. If you're visiting, if you're a first-time watcher, just comment below. Let us know where you're watching from. And today I'm joined by some lovely people and pets.
And pets.
As we
Go get yours, Novella. Go get yours.
I'm glad we're not in Springfield, Ohio. Wait a minute. Oh, wow.
They're eating cats and they're eating dogs.
Our animals have survived.
Is that a lasso, Opsa?
Huh?
Is that a lasso?
You know, I'm really not sure. I've had her for like 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know what kind of dog she is.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, but
she's a living dog.
A Maltese when I took her somewhere. Yeah, so I don't know. But she's alive.
Yes.
She survived.
Aw, bring your pet to work day. I don't have a pet. But
I think it's either Migs or Novella will understand this. You think the Duppy is out of Latasha's house, or you think?
All right, look,
listen, I figured it out.
I know what a Duppy is. I'm from West Philly.
Okay.
I guess I had YouTube open, so it was just playing live, I guess, from so I was hearing it live. So
Right.
We
That's
were worried about.
that's the hundreds of windows that's open.
yeah, I'm horrible at tabs. Like you don't even want to know. You don't even want to. But let's say hello to the people. Oh, there's Mike Williams. We have to give a shout out to Mike Williams. I saw him today at Southwest Philly's Community Health Fair. And he was working the table for the Alzheimer's Association, and he gave me one of these for all of you. So next time I see you, you'll get one of these.
Oh.
And so thanks, Mike, for looking out for us. Hello, Nicole. How you doing this evening? Anika from Miami. Thanks for joining.
She's really from here. She's really from Maryland, but she ran down to Miami.
She had to warm up, you know.
Oh, Cassandra Freeman is watching from the airport in Asheville, North Carolina, headed to Philly in an hour. Okay.
All right. Okay. All right.
Hey, Tiff.
Tiff. Hey, actually, we just want to say, Tiff, listen, we're still praying for Tiffany, who lost her mom this week.
Yes,
Oh,
definitely.
I'm so sorry,
Yeah,
Tiffany.
that's a tough
This
loss.
Sorry to hear that.
We're praying through it. Praying through
Yes. Holding you up. And hello to Tina.
Tina.
Pastor Tina.
Hey,
What's up, y'all? Whole lot of Holy Ghost on this live stream. All right.
it. She meant Duppy, but go ahead.
Rodney, you're crazy.
I've heard so many good things about Pastor Tina Carriger. I've
Oh yeah.
never heard her preach,
Awesome.
but I've heard so many good
Oh
things.
yeah. Tina is she's in the class by herself.
happy she's in the DMV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
She's at CPC now.
She's with she's with
Warfield, yeah.
she's in Allegheny South.
Right.
Oh my.
I see.
Oh, and then we have Rodney talking about joining from the cat and dog safety zone.
Yeah.
Hey,
All pets
Rodney
matter.
Grissom's son, Pine Forge. Ooh.
yeah, and his daughter's there now too.
But he plays the keyboard, the piano. He is awesome. I don't know. He got it from Rodney's wife or something, because Rodney.
Multi-talented. Hey, Carmen Davis from DC.
Hey.
In here. Yes. All right, guys. So what's been happening? I know I was just catching up on this second attempt on Trump. Is this going to be a thing now? We just saw that.
I mean, for those who don't know, can you clarify a little bit more what you're talking about there?
So, right now the FBI are investigating what appears to be a second attempt at assassination of Trump at his golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida. According to them, Secret Service, I guess they saw the rifle being like through the shrubbery, kind of pointed in the direction. He was about 400 to 500 feet away from Trump. They said it wasn't really clear, because when they saw him, of course, they started shooting, but they're not sure if any shots were actually fired at Trump. So it's like an attempt, meaning it appears as though that was his intention. So of course Trump left the golf course and his motorcade. So it's around 2:00 this afternoon. So this is something I just so.
And we start Hispanic Week.
It's what now?
Hispanic Week.
Heritage.
Yeah, Hispanic heritage.
Heritage, yeah. Oh,
Hispanic.
Tiffany brought it back. Go ahead.
No, she was just telling us the suspect's name. They do have Ryan Wesley Ralph.
You know what they say? If you give your child a middle name, he's going to end up being somebody's assassination attempt. Lee Harvey Oswald, John Wilkes Booth. And so
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I think they just do that to make
Your whole
sure.
government name, so you're not mixed up with somebody else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not, it's not that Tom Smith. It's
Right.
Tom Lewis Smith. And so,
Oh, Tally, what's your middle name?
it begins with an M.
M.
Lewis.
Yeah, I love to see how that's spelled.
It's the African spelling. I'm from the Runback tribe of Africa.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
let's leave that alone.
Gotcha.
Yes. Good evening. Praying for you, Nick.
Thank you, Barney. Thank you. For those, I'll add that for those who don't know, this past Friday, we memorialized one of Allegheny East's stellar soldiers in ministry, Pastor William Hall, who did more with little than any other minister I know. Bill Hall was not the most creative among us. He was not the most loquacious or erudite among us. He was a plain-spoken, relatively quiet person, but you would never outwork him, and you would never. Your commitment would never go deeper than his.
Wow.
And he poured every ounce of his humanity into me as a person, and so I will live the rest of my life indebted to who he was to me and all that he did for me. I would not be here were it not for Bill Hall. Literally,
Wow.
I wouldn't be here at all.
Yeah, it was a beautiful tribute to his life, and
Beautiful service.
if you didn't know him, you knew a little bit more about him after that service. And great program.
With Roxanne and Shelley and
Yeah.
John and his brother John and to all the rest of the family.
Yeah.
We got you.
Amen.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Joanne is watching. Yeah. And I always say, no matter where I go, we're going to run into some of our upset watchers. So shout out to a few of you that I saw at the service who made a point to let me know that you're watching. And we appreciate you guys for doing that so much. Yeah. You okay? Yeah. Okay. So
What's going on?
It's just one of those Sundays, like, ooh. But anyway, I think it's time that we just go right ahead and jump into our topic for. And we are so happy that we have Tally here, who is going to open it up for us so he can set the stage for our discussion this evening.
Well, thank you, Madam Moderator, for that very kind introduction. And it's a real privilege and pleasure to be back with all of our friends here at the Upset Podcast. And today, we're going to talk about a topic that is not only relevant, but very crucial for our development as a nation and as a church and as a people. We'll get right into it. I'll let the topic introduce itself. Here at the Upset Podcast, we take on the toughest subjects with a level of delicacy and a level of introspection that we perceive to be peerless. So now let's talk about you, and let's talk about the group that you're in. All of us are in a group of some sort. The Apostle Paul says, no man lives to himself, no man dies to himself. We're all a part of a group, and we figure out ways to work with one another in groups, even though we have problems and challenges. But the issue rises when in the middle of the group, someone comes along who's not quite like the rest of us. We want to talk today on the Upset Podcast about accommodating individuals who come into the group who are just a bit different. They are what we would commonly call strangers, foreigners, aliens. They stand out by their difference. And we like to talk about being a melting pot because we want everybody to kind of merge in with what we feel comfortable with. But sometimes people retain their own unique flavor and they become the alien in our midst, the stranger in our midst. And we're living in a country right now where this has become a really big issue. Before we get to our national view on this, let's talk a little bit about what the Bible has to say about people who are unlike us, people who are different, people who are strangers, people who are aliens. And the Bible is not quiet on this subject at all. For example, you all know this passage where the Bible says in Leviticus 19:34, the stranger who dwells among you shall be to you as one born among you, and you shall love him as yourself. It doesn't get any plainer than that. The Bible is saying that somebody who is an alien or who is a foreigner or who is a stranger, you have to treat them as though they were born in your own family. How about this one? Psalm 146 and verse 9. The Lord protects foreigners. He sustains the fatherless and the widow. In other words, if you don't look out for them, God will look out for them. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 19. Love ye therefore the stranger, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Remember, have some empathy because of what you yourselves went through. Jesus takes it a step higher and says that your salvation, at the end of time, your judgment might rest upon how you dealt with the stranger. He says, for I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Matthew 25 and verse 35. And last but not least, in the book of Deuteronomy, curses are announced upon people who do certain things. And this one rings out between the hills of Ebal and Gilboa. Is it Ebal or Gilboa? Those two hills, whichever hills they are. Cursed be anyone who deprives an alien, an orphan, or a widow of justice. All the people shall say, amen. So the Bible seems to be very pro-supportive when it comes to the foreigner, the stranger, or the alien. But then again, there is a flip side to this one, and that is the Bible sometimes says some things that kind of comes across as being opposed to or wary of the alien. In the book of Ezra, chapter 9, they were just coming back from the exile, and they had a sworn commitment to not mingle with strangers. And it says in Ezra chapter 9, 1 through 3, and I read a somewhat shortened version of this. The leaders approached me and said, the people of Israel have not kept themselves separate from the Baptists, from the surrounding peoples. When I heard this report, I tore my tunic and cloak, pulled out some hair from my head and beard, and sat down in horror. And it got worse than that. People got chastised because they were associating with the foreigners. How about this passage of scripture? In Deuteronomy chapter 20 and verse 16, the Lord giving marching orders to his people as they are going into lands that they did not own. The Lord says, but of the cities of these people, which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, you shall let nothing that breathes remain alive, but you shall utterly destroy them. That don't look too friendly towards strangers right there. How you doing? Where you from? Oh, from the other part of town, huh? You pull out a gun and they're gone. How about this one? Jesus here saying something, and many people often say, well, he was trying to make a point, and yes, he was, but he said something that came across so common and acceptable to his disciples that they didn't dispute it. When a woman was begging and pleading for the life and welfare of her daughter, Jesus says, I'm not here to talk to you. I am not here for you. You need to go to the welfare office or something. And the woman says, but I need it. And Jesus said, look, what I'm giving is only for the children. And she said, but look, can't we get the crumbs? And Jesus said, let the children be filled first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. Now, I'm going to tell you, I can go to Jesus and I'm asking for something. He could call me a dog. Look, I'm here because I believe the children are our future. But I'm taking my earrings off and smearing on the Vaseline when you call me a dog. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're talking about now is what appears to be scripture-sponsored xenophobia. What appears to be. For those of you who don't know what this $25 word that Miggs told me to share with you is, the word xenophobia descends from a compound Greek word, xenos being strange or alien, and phobia being the fear of. In other words, xenophobia is the fear of that which is strange or unlike you. And I'm here to say to you at the beginning of our conversation that xenophobia is not bad. It's not good. It's not bad. It simply is. But in order to better understand how it impacts us, we have to understand why it exists. Xenophobia exists in the minds and hearts and the brains of people who feel the need to make quick and firm judgments and decisions. In order to clear up ambiguity, they need to make decisions because they have to be clear about something. And in a world where there are dangers and you're not sure about things, you got to get clear all of a sudden. When you're walking through the woods and you hear something rattling and you see a serpent going near your ankles, that is not the time to pull out your little atlas on serpents in the woods. You got to make a decision right now. And in a world of unsafety, people feel a need to make quick decisions about things and to make firm judgments about them without taking a lot of time, without even thinking about it. It has to be subconscious. And so what happens is our brains are designed to categorize things without even thinking about them. We unconsciously, when we meet somebody, we immediately say, is it male or is it female? In the United States of America, the only country in the world where the first question is not, is it male or is it female? But the first question when you meet someone in America, is it black or is it white? But we are always categorizing, putting people in columns. And we do that so that we can come up with firm judgments and come up with conclusions about what we think these people, and it's the way the brain works. This is how we keep ourselves safe. Now, that is what xenophobia is as a psychological condition. And all across the United States of America, it has been practiced in an unhealthy way. In 1750, one of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, from right here in the city of Philadelphia, from where I'm broadcasting right now, was worried that our country would be overrun by a large number of swarthy foreigners speaking their own language among themselves. Now, you just know who he's talking about, a large number of swarthy foreigners. He's talking about those Africans, right? No, maybe he's talking about those Mexicans. No, he was actually talking about Germans. They were the other to Ben Franklin. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence, a place where we say, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, wrote a document called the Declaration of Independence, where they stated categorically and unequivocally that all men are created equal. But the 27th grievance talked about protecting the institution of slavery, where they discriminated against people of color and included the language that said that those people who actually owned the land that they had stolen were merciless Indian savages. Sounds like a little bit of xenophobia there, doesn't it? 1855 in Louisville, Kentucky, there was a pogrom, a riot that led to the death of 22 people, the burning of property, and individuals were chased out of town, fueled by members of a political party called the American Party. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Because they didn't like these foreigners, these alien people. And you know who those alien people were? Dark-skinned people coming from Africa. No. Mexicans, Chinese? No. The people that they killed and burned out were Irish Catholics, because folks have always tried to figure out a way to separate the us from the them. And in 1890, one of the historic massacres in this country that we wear to our shame to this day, the United States Army massacred over 146 Lakota Sioux, most of them who were women and children, near Wounded Knee, South Dakota, in the name of justice. And that's what makes xenophobia so horrifying, because people typically do it to protect themselves, and they create laws to protect themselves so that it looks like you're doing something just when you're trying to get rid of people that you're afraid of who are different from you. Well, that's the country. That's the secular world. The good news, ladies and gentlemen, is that at least the church doesn't act that way, right? Well, you would think that the church, because of love and grace and all that God does, would be the place where you would find the greatest level of justice and equanimity, so forth. And one scholar said that an integrated church would be defined as having less than 80% of the congregation being of the same race or ethnicity. 80% being less than the same race or ethnicity. But unfortunately, in the United States of America, less than 1 in 5, only 20% of American citizens attend a church that can be considered diverse. How about this? The average congregation was 8 times less diverse than the neighborhood in which the congregation was placed, and 4 times less diverse in recent years. Things have changed some. Is it because the neighborhoods have changed or because people have changed? Well, that's what it says now. But when we were growing up, the church would be less diverse than the community. In other words, the church is more xenophobic than the people around them. Well, at least we're SDAs, and SDAs bear the imprimatur and wear the flag of equanimity, because we are among the most diverse denominations in the world. 37% are white, 32% are Black, 15% Latino, Hispanic, 8% Asian, another 8% another race or mixed race. And we are at least an example of what it should mean to be diverse. Not quite. That's the membership. The congregations are almost completely monolithic. We even call conferences white conferences and Black churches, because we are so racially divided congregationally. And the thing about it is that we kind of like it that way. So therefore, I'm not surprised, and you shouldn't be either, that the first crisis in the New Testament church wasn't one of doctrine. It wasn't one of clothing. It was one of ethnicity or grouping. The Greek widows complained because the Hebrew widows were getting their distribution and the Greek widows were not. And then the next crisis was because they said, well, we can't give the gospel to them folks over there because they are the other folks. It seems that xenophobia is as much a part of a church as anything else. Okay. Before we get back to the group, let's ask ourselves a couple of questions. Xenophobia exists. It is based on a natural inclination of the human brain and mind. If this was an absolutely safe world, there'd be no xenophobia, because you wouldn't be afraid of losing or being injured, but it is not. And so we have a natural need, a defensive need to categorize things. Ask yourself, how often do you find yourself automatically categorizing someone? If you see a person who has the phenotype of someone from Asia and they speak perfect English, do you find that you're shocked because you're supposed to be Chinese? Why aren't you saying the thing like this? Mhm. Ask yourself how often you subconsciously put people in categories and then expect them to be the way you categorize them. And let me ask you this: are you willing to attend a church that does not reflect your cultural affiliation? And if you're feeling so broad-minded and so erudite as to say, "Of course I am," then let me ask you a question: why ain't you? All right, I'll leave that alone right there before I get cast out into outer darkness. And do you discuss approaches to immigration issues? Has your church talked openly about immigration issues, sanctuary movements, what to do with refugees and how to assist them, and how to impact policies concerning immigration? And last but not least, what are your views on the economic and social implications? Do you feel that people coming in from other places are taking your jobs, your black jobs? Do you think that somehow or another that people coming in are draining the resources from your nation, which makes your country poorer? These are questions to ask as we give consideration to how our faith community and how our congregations and how we as a people deal with immigration. These questions are too deep and heavy for any one person to decide on their own, which is why I bring these matters to the greatest minds and the broadest hearts and the most articulate of tongues to bring to you answers to carry forward as we go on to talk about immigration. What say you one? What say you all?
All right, let's get ready for the benediction.
Always look around. It's like, who's he talking about, right? But no, great intro. I wow. Every time I think you can't get more thorough, Tally, you do.
You know, it's an interesting topic because
It is.
we are naturally inclined to discriminate.
Yeah.
And anybody who says, I never discriminate. Oh, really? So when you were looking for your date, and if you're heterosexual and you're looking for a date, did you just walk into an auditorium and say, I don't care, male or female? You discriminated because we are wired that way. The problem comes about when we condemn people to the values that we assign to the category we put them in. Remember the movie White Men Can't Jump?
Yeah.
And every time we saw a white basketball player who played well, we said, man, that boy got to have some black in him. That is a racist, discriminatory thing to say. But that is our discrimination, which allows for xenophobia.
No, I agree. And I think it's true. I mean, it's one of those things we have to be honest with, certain biases we have. I mean, I think too, we're also influenced a lot by media, by our home, by our culture in terms of how we view certain groups of people. I mean, not to jump back to this, but because she had asked this question earlier when we were talking about our comments, some of the comments that were made by presidential candidate Donald Trump in terms of, the Haitians eating their pets and stuff like that. People will listen to commentary like that and automatically group Haitians into, a pet eating community. And these are the types of things that continue to form in people's minds. So then when they see certain groups of people, those are the things they associate with them. And I think it's really sad because there are a lot of stereotypes. I'm gonna be honest, there were a lot of stereotypes I heard about various groups of people as I was growing up. Oh, those people, they do this. Those people, they do that. And I always had an issue with it. I always felt uncomfortable hearing that. But at the same time, you almost feel like, should I pay attention to this? Because is this protecting me from something? And a lot of times, the reason we do that, Tally, is because there is some fear. There is some intimidating factor about the group of people, which is why we have to put them in this box so that we know how to navigate them.
Let's bring this thing closer to the bone. I am the oldest minister on this line, and I can remember distinctly. I didn't grow up Adventist, but I can remember distinctly. I was hired in 1978, and I can remember distinctly when there was a battle going on about the growth of the Caribbean membership in our conference, and how there was a great fear that those people are going to take over our conference. Anybody else remember that?
I wasn't born, so I don't remember it.
Well, first,
thank you, Novella.
Well, let me get the arrow out of the mouth. Okay. Okay.
But I would love to hear about that.
Well, it's not only the Allegheny East Conference. There's also a Northeastern Conference.
Northeastern.
When
Regional.
you knew which church was considered the Caribbean, and I grew up in the 70s, so as a kid, so you already knew which churches were Caribbean churches and which churches were American churches, and most of the American churches during the diaspora, if I'm saying it right, of the 60s is really what changed the in New York. It started in Hansel Place, and Hansel Place birthed Bethel, and Bethel Church birthed Flatbush Church, and now all the churches are basically Caribbean churches. And you think to yourself, now when you send a pastor there, during when I was growing up, you had to send a Caribbean pastor there, so I could see it. And going down the East Coast, it might be exactly the same thing going on the East Coast. And not only was that with Caribbeans, but it was the same thing with Hispanics. When we grew up, Migs, you were behind me, but when we were in Great New York Academy was a white academy. And then it became a Black and Spanish academy. And so what is it going to be next? So you look at CPC. CPC used to be a Caucasian church, with 25 members till Henry Wright got there. And now it sounds like, and I know we joked about it, but it's Allegheny South now, on call. So, and there is a bit of fear. It's a bit of fear of what I'm not used to. I'd like to say it like that, what I'm not used to, right? And I even made some statements that I have gotten calls on recently when I call my church a Jamaican church. There are people who are offended by it, or offended where I thought that I was saying something that was, just even though it's just you're bigging it up in one way. Some people look at it as a negativity or something, or bringing the culture down. So there are splits that's there, and we have to admit that there are splits that's there. I do have something, but later on, I feel that. Well, I'll say it now. I think that the way the white conference or the white people treated us coming in, we have to be careful that we're not treating others the same.
Absolutely.
You throw what you catch. If I caught oppression and bitterness, and for example, it is well known that children who were beaten by their parents, tend to throw that in the direction of their own children, even though they hated it when it happened to them. It's like people joining a fraternity. They get beaten, hazed, and brutalized, can't stand it, and as soon as they cross over and they become a member, they can't wait for the next class to come. So you throw what you catch.
We do that.
Writing that down.
We do that in ministry also, though. There's a whole lot of hazing in ministry.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it, but it is. Sometimes we even have some of our great preachers, and I can call them out. We have some of our great Greg Nelsons, and what's Migs? What's the dude's name up in Boston? Boston.
Edsel.
Edsel, right? They're of Haitian descent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are we saying? Are we saying that they're too good to get a Haitian church? What do we say? I know it's the Upset podcast, but I'm just saying, one day we had one of the Haitian pastors come in, and he took the place of, I don't know if you all remember this, he took the place of a pastor that couldn't preach, that was not able to preach that Friday, that I think it was a Wednesday night at camp meeting, and his name changed to the Haitian Sensation because he ripped shop that night. I think we put each other in categories according to where we're from, and say, well, because you're Spanish, now you baptize, and now we are. Now, Caribbeans is now moving to the place of complacency where they're not the baptizers anymore. So we do. It's sorry to say.
Is it wrong to categorize? Is it wrong to stereotype? Is it wrong?
So what about our ethnic groups? In our conference, we have ethnic groups.
Mm-hmm.
Haitian, let me see. Haitian, African, Hispanic, and then other, which is
Korean, Southeast Asian.
Indonesia.
True.
Yeah,
Mhm.
South Asian.
Asian, right? And so I've always looked at that as because of languages, right? So creating support, conversations, comfort with the languages as well as the culture, just to provide deeper ministry, in their areas and stuff like that. I've always looked at it like that, and it's a positive thing. But in light of what we're talking about regarding fear, right? And various cultures taking over, does that come into play when we look at our ethnic groups?
Good
Not
point.
just, one, but the various ones? I don't know.
I don't look at it as, I mean, I do think some of the fear for some people is a fear of takeover, that, you know, natural born Americans will no longer be the prominent leaders, whether it's of the church or in the church. I do think, like, for our area, I mean, for our ethnic groups, the intent was, like you were saying, Novella, to create like some synergy, allow some representation from each of those groups so that they could be part of the larger committees and voice things based on those cultural, sensitivities and things of that nature. I mean, like for instance, right now in Allegheny East, we have an African pastor who is the leader, the area leader for Baltimore, and that's the first time. I understand that's historic. That's the first time we've ever had that. And even when it was stated, I was kind of like, wow, this sounds kind of sad that this is, the first time, and it had to be noted. I don't. I mean, I don't know how to feel about.
Say it. Don't worry about the paycheck. Say it.
I don't. I try not to categorize people, like, for instance, when you were talking about this the speaker, like, and they did such a great job. I wouldn't say, wow, that was a great Haitian preacher. Like, I don't do, like, if I hear a good sermon, it's a good sermon. I'm not looking at the nationality per se of the person who delivered it. Now, of course, like you were saying, Tally, about the, white man can't jump. So when you see a white man playing basketball, he must have something in him. I mean, there are times when you see something, you're like, whoa, I'm not used to that, because what I know of that culture, they don't typically do this or that. That's one thing. But I don't know. I want us to get out of the headspace where, like you said, Tally, the first thing we do is categorize where they're from before we look at who they are as a person and what they're bringing to the table. Like, why is that?
May I gently push back on that? And
Sure.
one of the reasons I shared that is because if you're trying to deny something that is naturally there, typically what happens, you start living in denial and you never confront it. It is natural to categorize. It is natural to discriminate. And discrimination doesn't mean mistreatment. If Novella and I are walking down the hall and we both decide we want to go to the bathroom, I'm hoping that we will have enough sense to discriminate which rooms we're going to go into. She'll go into the one that says women. I'll go into the one that says men, because it is natural. The question we have to ask ourselves is, am I discriminate to empower others and to safeguard their interest, or am I discriminating based on my fears and to protect my own interests? It's acceptable to recognize that we naturally discriminate, and because of sin, we live in a world of harm. And in a world of harm, you have to quickly decide whether something is going to hurt you. But
Yes.
what you have to realize is that you have to get past the spirit of fear so that you can say, okay, even though I see a person, all right, Miggs is dark skinned, he's darker complexion than I am. In the world I was raised in, we were raised to fear somebody darker. And you have to acknowledge these things and then proactively try to gestalt your way out of those mindsets that you carry. But first you have to acknowledge them. So if I see a white man, and this is something I fought with, and I'm ashamed of it, but it's true. Tim Henderson, who was a fellow pastor, said to me, "Why do you keep acting like white people are smarter than you?" And I said, "I don't act that way." He said, "Yeah, you do." And he showed me how I did. And I realized, growing up in the United States of America, that every time I walked into a building, everybody was important. Their picture was on the wall. They were white. When I pulled up my money, everybody was important. They
Yeah,
were
it's
right.
conditioned.
I've been trained that way.
Right.
Until you acknowledge that, you can't change it.
I agree.
Yeah, I think on a very human level, when we take this prejudice conversation and apply it to our regular, everyday life, um, outside of the context of church, we have to use that level of judgment to live. For example, let's say we are in Africa and we're trying to survive. If you hear a growl from a lion,
Right.
you have to make a quick decision if you're going to explore
Is
where
that
the growl
somebody's
is coming.
stomach?
Correct.
Yeah.
That is our human, innate defense mechanism to determine life and death. If you saw 10 people eat a particular fruit from a tree
Mhm.
and all of them died, you have to make a quick decision. You're not going to examine, whether they picked it at the right time, whether the aki was fully, developed or not. You don't have that time to go through the science of it. You have to make a quick decision. So I think in our everyday life, we do have some, I would say, filters. We have filtered to determine what is right and what's wrong, what's appropriate. If you've been bit by a pit bull, you probably don't want to pet one. Okay, and so that is a natural response. I think what Tally's saying, and I think it it it, it will make everyone uncomfortable because our conversation has typically been about the imbalance in terms of white power structures and systems versus the oppressed, right? Um, but when you realize that we sometimes knowingly or unknowingly participate in our small power structures in prejudicial practices, then you have to admit that I got a little bit of that in me as well. When you look at a certain group or certain race and you think lowly, I'll say this. I was having a conversation recently. I'm not gonna say with who, but
Go ahead, man. You can say it was with me, man. Go ahead.
It's just us. You can.
I'll say where I had the conversation. Right? The conversation happened in Brooklyn. Okay, it happened in Brooklyn, and I was sharing the experience of that me and my wife's family had to go through in Jamaica and dealing with Kingston, all that kind of stuff. And they had some remarks about Jamaicans and their outward pride and boast that makes so even within the Caribbean islands, Jamaicans kind of treat themselves differently. Like so it's a bigger island, bigger English speaking island, and so smaller islands are made to feel or are attempted to make you feel inferior. And so when they're hearing some of these issues that are happening in Jamaica, they don't think we need to change. There's in that conversation, they're like, so you mean these people who are loud and boasty have these these issues on their island? I thought Jamaica was perfect. But we don't see it as this is a Caribbean issue. They saw it as it was a them issue, right? And we have the same issue amongst Africans of the diaspora, like through and through, whether it's Nigerians talking about Ghanaians or South Africans talking about whomever, black individuals from the UK talking about Black Americans. And we have these conversations, and a lot of it happens behind closed doors, and we think that it doesn't affect our judgment in real life, but most times it does. And how we treat each other, it shows up in our judgment. You think it's just I don't care for this situation, but a lot of times our prejudice, our discrimination, it shows up in how we handle certain individuals, whether that's you're trying to be impartial in handling, I'm gonna talk to Novella now, in handling a church dispute, right? But this lady gave you some food last week, and the other person has been, kind of cold shoulder towards you. Who are you going to side with in that moment?
I said nobody.
that's what we want to think. You know, Novella's a great pastor, so I just want to.
Novella, she has an ability to be extraordinarily balanced.
Yes. Some people might be swayed, where we will allow somebody to throw insults and we'll hold someone else back from answering. I've seen that happen, where we don't recognize that our discrimination, our prejudice, it shows up.
You know, Mix, I have that too, and I'm not going to even front. Today, you know, I went over to one of the sisters' houses to pick up some food, and she said, I need to give some food to a homeless person. And we're driving out. She's like, I'm gonna go with you. I did not want to go. Number one, I don't want to deal with no homeless people, right? No, I'm just gonna be honest with you. There's other there's other sides of ministry that I can do, and I can do well, but she really got me to go with her to feed the homeless this homeless person. The first question I asked her, man, I'm a little ashamed of it, but I'm gonna just put it out there. Is he white or black?
What made you ask that?
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask
that question.
I think because if he's black, I'm gonna have a better understanding, or I'm thinking this. I'm talking now. I'm just, as you asking me this question, I'm thinking through, right? I would be able to relate to him better if he was black. If he's white, I may have a different way of approaching it. Now, I'm ashamed that I should ask that because we're going to feed a person, but that's the first question I asked her, and that's just today. So I don't want to sit there and say this is somebody else or this is what somebody else is going through. I have to ask myself the question, why is it that I had to ask that question? When she said he was black, it was easier for me, or I said to myself, it's easy for me to have been able to approach his compound than if I thought it was a white person. And I didn't ask if he was Hispanic, and it's in an Hispanic neighborhood. So why didn't I ask if he was Spanish or something else, or something like that? I think we have to do some introspection of who we are as Christians to be able to draw the line somewhere. And I think that's the most difficult thing to be able to do. Someone just texted me and said, when we started off tally of talking about Allegheny East, and I said Northeastern, they said it was the same way in California.
Yeah.
And one of the frights that they said, they didn't post it here, but one of the frights they had was that when the Caribbean guys came in, they started giving jobs to the Caribbean guys. I'm just going by the, I didn't know that, but I'm going by the text. So then there is something that there's a fear to, that, you know, you're going to end up being edged out, or, you know, or not be able to.
That's it.
And then there's this thing there that Jamaicans would do anything, or Caribbean people would do anything. So they'll have the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 churches, while the lazy Americans will only do one. And I don't believe that, by the way. I'm just saying what's out there. So you know, we do have to rethink in order to be able to serve.
The reason why I brought up the psychological component that is at the foundation of it is because the discrimination and xenophobia, they are designed for survival. For example, chimpanzees are chimpanzees, but they will fight and kill each other if they're from a different tribe, just like lions.
Sure.
And what happens is the human brain is wired to figure out who is for me and best aligned with my needs and causes, and who is not. And I am going to protect those that I think are most aligned with my needs and causes, because the other is going to put me at risk. The only thing that saves us from that is proactively recognizing that in Christ, in Christ, there is no spirit of fear. So I don't fear the loss. That's what Jesus said. If they hit you, you turn the other cheek. You don't fear the loss. And the other thing is to proactively go out of your way to create the discomfort, to say, I'm going to do this for the purpose of trying to diversify so that people will not become comfortable with their diversity. And Rodney Smith put a point up there that I'll get back to later. I think that just...
before you get to that, I was thinking about what Miguel was saying too, and what you were saying, Tally, about, I mean, what I gathered from what you were saying, Miguel, is that we don't have time to investigate every situation, every person. So we just have to go based on what we largely know and accept it. And I think, that was one of the turning points for me in coming to terms with the racism in America and how people would look at me just simply because I'm Black and come up with all kinds of, reasons why I wasn't qualified, why I'm this, I'm that, and that. And it used to really bother me. Like, it really bothered me to the point where I started reflecting on, oh, how do I do that to other people? Who are people that I look at and say, oh, they're so-and-so, so they must be this. And because I hate so much when it's done to me, it's forced me, even when that thought comes in my mind, this group of people means this, I take time to get to know individuals as individuals and not their class or, what they're classified as, to make judgment in terms of, are they a threat or are they not a threat? You know what I mean? So instead of saying, oh, they're this, so therefore they're that, because when we do that, we kind of cut ourselves off from learning more about other cultures, other people. And it makes us more defensive. When you get to the point where you have you've categorized people, you look around and the only people around you are people who look like you, talk like you. And how do you grow? How do you grow as an individual? How do you win people when you're afraid of the people because they're different than you? This makes sense.
Lord, why did I go on this show here? I think about my children that all date outside of their race, right? I mean, and now we're talking about they all date outside of our race.
Outside of the human race?
I'm sorry. Charlie, stop it. Outside of our...
You're going to have a chimp in-law?
And I really, sometimes we sit down, whether we're at dinner or we go out somewhere, and I have to curb my tongue because there's some things that I can say that I don't want to say, or I don't want to offend, or I don't want. And the reason why I'm not offended is because they're there. They're sitting there. So I don't want to say anything that's going to hurt either one of them. And then the other side of it is I remember talking to my daughter about her dating outside of Jamaican. And and she said, you know what, Dad? Actually, both of them said this. You taught us to love.
As I say.
And are you saying that you taught us to love with but not
with an asterisk?
With restrictions,
with a restriction to it. And, though I didn't have a big problem with it, I was uncomfortable, and I have to be honest with you. I was uncomfortable. I'm not uncomfortable now, and one of the reasons why I'm not uncomfortable is because of the way that he treats my daughter, and really that's where it is. But I have to say, I come with a level of racism, if you want to call it that those walls need to be lowered, and I think it still needs to be.
For the sake of discussion, racism is the construction of systems that allow empowerment and the additional resources to be retained, controlled, and extended to people of one's own race. And that is why they say Black people in America can't be racist, because we can't create that system. Discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice, we can all participate in.
I got the word bigotry. It just sounds bad. I'll take the other two, but the other one just sounds bad. But honestly, everybody, I mean, I know that we're talking. I don't mind being transparent. It's something I still have to work on. And it doesn't come from a standpoint of hate either. I think it comes from a standpoint of to preserve.
Fear.
And fear, yeah.
This lady I know, I don't know why it was so deep, but her kids kind of set her up because they know she had an issue with them dating outside of their race. And so they were like, oh yeah, I would like you to meet Sarah. So they picked the most possible white name, if you will, and said, we want you to meet Sarah, and showed a picture of the guys. It was a friend that he was in a picture with, but they made it seem like that was his lady. All of a sudden she's like, we don't do that. We don't. And I'm like, he's telling you it's a woman though. So what's the problem? Even though she's of another race, this is a big church leader. This person is a big church leader. And I'm saying to myself,
I missed their name. What was their name?
I'll take the deal.
Big church leader. And when my friends were telling me, I was standing there like, so this individual really doesn't like people or love people or what's happening. All the guy did was say and show a picture of my other race, Sarah, who's my lady, but it was a big joke. And that's how turned up they got about it, just because the person was another race. And I'm like, what's the big deal? I mean, yeah, there's that feeling of maybe preserve or, like Pat, you have your own feelings towards it and stuff like that. But the way she went off, I was just like, I don't get it. It, yeah. It seemed a little extreme, more than preference. You know what I mean? Like Pat may have a preference, but it seemed more than preference. It seemed like problem.
At Pat's next family reunion, he's going to be the only black person there. But
it's going to happen. Can I just ask this? What is it okay to be in a multicultural church? To have a multicultural? I've seen a multicultural church.
It is preferred.
Yeah.
From the perspective of godliness, it is preferred and demanded.
Can I throw a real curveball? I'm talking about the ones that's gonna break your elbow. I'm gonna throw a curveball.
I just moved my elbow to the side, by the way. Go ahead.
Okay. If a church neighborhood has become gentrified, should they move?
Pat, I told you that in confidence.
And the reason why they shouldn't move is because neighborhood is no longer geographical. I mean, in days going by, your neighborhood was the street where you lived and around the corner. Nowadays, neighborhood is something that's virtual. And so, and just like people, I have a nephew who lives in California and he works for a company in North Carolina. So you don't have to move, and so. But the question to always ask yourself is when you find yourself discriminating or categorizing is, am I doing this to empower or am I doing this to protect and preserve based upon my fear? Like Winston was asking.
It might be that last one,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the lady I was describing, it was probably a protect. It was probably a fear.
Yeah.
Some of the fear as well. And I remember asking someone this one time, I said, what would you say if I said to you, hi, this is, my boyfriend, so-and-so, and he's like Indian. I just picked something. They said, oh, everything would be fine. I would just want to know that you are not being ill-treated by his family for not being Indian or white or Asian or, I'm saying Chinese or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's where some people have a fear that will you be mistreated or not regarded or respected when you go over into a different culture that may not value all of who you are and what you come with, male or female,
Thanks, Novella, because that's something that I think about a lot. How are they going to treat my daughter? How are they going to treat my son? And I'll never forget. One day we were at I think executive committee meeting, and a call had come in, or some meeting we had over the conference. And a call had come in that Jordan was beat up because he was walking with his white girlfriend. And I was ready to put my credentials on the table, and I'm not even talking about, how you kind of say to yourself, "Oh, I'm going to fight." I don't mean that. I mean, y'all would have to do prison ministries, as far as that's concerned. And there was a certain hate that I had that when I drove down the block and I saw someone white, that's the person that jumped my son. That's the person that until it all kind of subsides as you go along. I think there's a lot of experiences that we go through that help shape your thought process. And I think that's where we have to be careful of. I also went through Andrews University, and there were so many racist innuendos going through there that you come through the ministry, and you want to protect regional conferences, and you want to protect our African American or our Black churches. You want to protect them because you've seen some of the things that they have said and some of the things that they have done. I've had choirs that said, "Don't bring the drums inside. We don't. African music is this way. Is demonic and all of that." Excuse me, we were taught that in classes. So how are we supposed to feel when we come back out and our experiences have shaped some of those things? I don't want to open up a monkey wrench there, but we just have to try to do the best we can to be like Christ in every example, and that's difficult.
Yeah.
I think you open a can of worms and you throw a monkey wrench, but no matter how you do it, I'm glad you didn't go to jail for that thing. There's a person who, and I haven't been on for a while, but there's a person who tunes in and likes to toss monkey wrenches a little bit. And one of them was this person right around 6:45 made this statement, and I want to make sure I find it. It says,
it's on the screen if that's it.
Knowing that Jamaicans are very aggressive, why would the church select the whole leadership from one ethnic group? A wise pastor would recognize this and balance out his team. Now, this statement...
Knowing that Jamaicans are very aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, the statement starts off in ways that I find offensive to what we're trying to promote today.
Yeah.
Knowing that Jamaicans I do not know that Jamaicans are very aggressive. I know that there are some Jamaicans who are aggressive, just like I know that there's some Negroes who are aggressive, some white people who are aggressive, and some Chinese people. There are people who are aggressive. So I do not know that Jamaicans are very aggressive. And then the idea that I'm going to select leadership based upon what I perceive groups to be, the very discrimination that you say you're trying to work against. And I'm not quite sure as to whether or not the individual who posed that question has thought through the reasoning that undergirds the expression that he has shared in that particular instance.
I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm not saying this because my family is Jamaican at all. I am saying this seriously because the mindset, we cross over into what we say we don't like,
right?
And making the statement that the gentleman just made,
right?
He maybe has been kind of groomed to that type of mentality because of the jokes that people make. You know the jokes. When you go to that Jamaican eatery, the lady behind the counter is always having a bad day.
We
never serve that, and she will let you know we are not cooking that today.
We not have that.
We not have that today. We're the worst, and every day is a bad day. And so those kind of jokes perhaps help people have that kind of comment, right? But can people separate, hey, that's not every Asian or Jamaican or Indian or whatever the case may be, and be able to sit down with someone at the interview table and see them for who they are, to see their character and their personality. It will be good though, and to see who the person is, and their personality and their character and what their, say, ministry goals and values are, and how they have treated people in high moments and in poor moments, and then be able to evaluate that pastor to say, this pastor would fit this pastoral team,
right?
Or this pastor would fit this church solo, or whatever the case may be. And it's just, I think a lot of it comes from the jokes we make. All Chinese people are creative. All Asian people are smart. All Spanish people work hard. All Haitian people have 3 jobs. Come on, right?
Yeah.
So once we make those kind of jokes, do we know how to enjoy it socially? Because some of it is just fun and lighthearted, right? Do we know how to enjoy it socially and separate it when it comes to the professional moment, so that our minds are clear and that we're operating in a fair and balanced way? I'm so happy you brought that up, Tom.
Lady Vella, don't we say that there's truth in jest?
Yeah.
Right. So even there's sometimes that we joke about something, it's something that we really, it's really in the back of our minds. Okay. I think and I go back to today, it's a homeless man. Right? It's not a homeless black man. It's not a homeless white man. There are people who have left, and then,
that homeless white man could have dated your daughter, Pat.
I'm sorry. Oh my goodness, that's another layer there.
Tyler, I really.
You almost took his breath away just now. You saw that?
But here's the funny part. Somebody texted me in the background and was like, "Man, why you look so upset?" But I'm not really upset. I really want to go to heaven, right? And And I mean, I really Tally.
Black heaven or
I was I was I was I was just about to say, it's only our experiences that shape those type of things, right? So I want to go, but I don't want to. My character has to get there,
Thank you.
and I think that the problem is that I have to let go of some of the things, even church. I mean, even when I think about church, and I can say this, and I know that my members won't have a problem with this. We actually sat down to figure out how not to be a Jamaican church.
I get it.
And I respect them for that. I really do. And I think we were talking in one of our meetings. I think Latasha, you was in this meeting where they said, Pat, why are you talking about your Jamaican church? You are Jamaican. I'm like, no, my church does not consider me Jamaican. Even though I'm a second generation, they don't look at me as Jamaican.
Mhm.
Right?
Are you Jamaican now? Are you?
They don't even use it Jamaican.
he's a Yankee?
I'm Yankee. I'm
Oh,
born here. And actually, Yankee is a negative term.
It is.
The way they say it is, right? So it's like saying, it's really saying you're Yankee, you're not like us. So being in this situation is actually teaching me how to not say they are this and we are that. And it's going to take some time for us to be able to learn how to walk through that. And
Pat, it's one of the reasons why when people ask me where I'm from, I tell them I'm from Brooklyn. Because my experiences growing up in a Caribbean church home and being an American-born citizen, you live between these two realities, right? Where you're used to people making jokes at your expense for not being Caribbean enough.
That's right.
But then you go to school and you start pronouncing words like phlegm
or vegetable.
Vegetables. and it becomes
comfortable.
Yeah.
You begin to realize that you're not quite American enough.
Right.
And I think there's a temptation to side with either one and to take on the biases of either one of these groups. So when I went down to Oakwood,
like,
oh, y'all American, like your granddaddy, your great grand, and I started
from Wisconsin, like
I get it. When I went to Oakwood, I met people whose great grandfathers were slaves. Real slaves. I mean, not what we see on TV. This thing is real. That's where we really had grits. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Megs. Finish up.
No, and it challenged all the misconceptions of African Americans. I had to confront those things, those prejudiced belief systems, and come to the grips that it really doesn't matter. I know lazy Caribbean people.
That's right.
I know lazy Jamaicans specifically.
Don't say it out loud, but you're right.
I know. I'm gonna say it with my chest. And I know some hardworking African Americans, right? And those qualities are not regional.
Yeah, Tasha.
Because I'm retired.
We all picking on Latasha because
the hardworking American, Tasha.
Because Tally is Jamaican. That's the bottom line.
I mean, listen, but you got to confront those things, and I think when the danger sets in when we close our ears to new evidence that goes against our preconceived notions, and we're only looking for evidence that confirms our previous beliefs.
Yes.
Right? And I see that quite often. So, my wife's family's from Jamaica, and I'll state one of my preconceived notions about Jamaicans, of course. I never thought I would marry a Jamaican. Living in Brooklyn, most of the Jamaicans that I met came from Kingston or the surrounding cities. Right. What I learned about Kingston, which you'll learn from any major city, if you go to any major city, there's a level of every city has a cadence.
Yeah, that's right.
Every city has a cadence, and you gotta move with the cadence of that city. If you're from New York, you know, if you're not walking fast, you might get trampled, right?
Yep.
So you got to move with the cadence of that city. And I go city to city, and you can. Kingston was like Brooklyn extended.
Right.
Where my wife's family's from is the countryside.
They from England.
They have a whole different pace.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
They have a whole different pace. So my bias that
So
all
easy.
Jamaicans are aggressive, I had to confront the reality that only a fraction of this island lives within Kingston. Everyone else live in a very peaceful, calm life. And even those in Kingston, there's some who live on the mountaintop, who live on the hills.
It's not all the same. Yep.
And there's some who live in the inner city. So I cannot just slap a filter on the entire 3.5 million people that live in Jamaica, something like that, right? And say every person from Jamaica, and then the Haitians.
Yep.
I went to a Haitian school, 3rd grade to 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
All of my belief systems come from that, that I know of Haitian culture, come from interaction with Haitian people.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I left the school that I started hearing, crazy stories about. I'm like that's not
cats and come on, man.
I ain't never listen. You talk about some of the cleanest people I know. The most particular people.
What?
When it comes to their food.
You ever had Haitian black rice?
Yes, I have.
Man.
See,
so
this is good.
We've gone culinary.
Yeah.
I know. I
I don't know about the rest of you, but me go on yard in a moment.
Man.
Yeah, I wanted to put up this.
Go ahead.
Now, I wanted to put up this comment from Raquel because I think it's so true. She talks about the fact that she works with such a diverse group of people, and it's forced her to kind of deal with all of her preconceived notions about each of these particular groups. But in doing so, she was able to kind of stretch those boundaries, enjoy the richness of humanity. And I think that's the thing. We limit ourselves from experiencing so many different cultures and people because of these stereotypes. And I think that is the real takeaway from these types of conversations, because when you think about it, when we think about heaven, what do we think is going to look like? I mean, I really think we don't think about heaven in the right we think heaven is going to be a duplication of what we have here, just no more death, and we can still be separate and we can still have our biases, but we're going to be in heaven with people from all of these nationalities with which we have these preconceived.
Jamaicans are going to have their side. Sorry.
yeah, we'll see. But the point is, if we're not practicing now seeing people as people and being unified by that one verb, love. I always say, Lord, help me see people like you see people. Like, that's a real prayer.
Yeah.
Because I know how I'm viewing them through the lens of all of my biases, all the things I've heard, all the things I may have experienced. But I'm like, Lord, help me to see people as you see people, because he just sees. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of things knowing about people's cultures that can help inform how you interact with them. It's not necessarily a negative thing. You know what I mean? I'm also, Miguel, married to a Jamaican. And there are things since being married to him that I've learned about the culture that helps me to interact with other Jamaicans in a way. Sometimes they're surprised that I understand patois. Okay, I get it. I can have the conversation. I might not be able to speak it, but I can understand it. You know what I mean? And because of that, I have richer conversations with other people. But if I said, first of all, I'm not dating you because you're Jamaican and you know what they say about Jamaican men. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it stopped right there, I could have limited my life. You know,
you did that just now, like. We biased. That's it.
But what she's saying is so darn.
No, it's true,
man. Like, and I feel like some people miss out on richness and fulfillment in friendships and other interactions because they put up this wall. Like, I have a cousin who married a lily white guy. Okay. And we love Justin. Like, I just see Justin as my cousin. You know what I'm saying? As if he wasn't married in. Like, that's cousin Justin.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been dating from like young, like teenage and type of thing. So we've known him for a long time. And just the comfort that we all have with him. And I remember when one of our black stars died, like Cicely Tyson or something. And I remember him boldly, because whenever you type something on Facebook, you have to be ready. And my white cousin types, oh, isn't she the person who so? And I said, no, she did whatever. He's like, oh, okay, thank you so much. I was just trying to understand. You see, like he did what Tasha you described. I'm submerging, I'm understanding, and I'm getting in it, as opposed to him just pulling away and just like, oh, whatever, someone else died. He realized, well, this is an important figure, not just to the Black community or the entertainment community, or whatever, but to my cousin Novella. So let me ask.
Yeah,
Right.
good stuff.
Yeah. It helps us. It just helps us to be better people, guys. So I mean, I think it's given us reason to just do some evaluation, like even test yourself tomorrow as you go out into the world and think about how many thoughts just come to your head immediately when you see certain groups of people, and like address that thing, like acknowledge it. You know what I mean? Like call it out in your head, not out. Call it out in your head and act accordingly. Maybe speak to someone that you've been avoiding because you've put them in a box, and now you know what's the phrase? Be curious, not judgmental. Let's seek to be curious about others and not to judge them based on.
Oh, go ahead, Pastor.
I think that's the second week in a row Tasha passed her the moment.
Yep. I couldn't get the music up fast enough.
It's rubbing off on me. You know, I'm kind of squeezed in between all of this, as someone described anointing. I can't. Some of it's rubbing off on me.
Is there one?
Go ahead.
Is there one?
Hey, get the altar call. Come on.
I haven't perfected that part yet. I'll let
There's
y'all.
no perfection in an altar call.
Uh-oh. Teach it now.
All it is a question, right? An invitation.
Come on, invite him, Tasha.
Is there one? That's all you have to say is there one. That's all.
Is there one?
There's something on my altar that I'm getting ready to get to in a moment.
Sally's like, if y'all don't wrap this up. Okay.
Well, just let us say, is there one? I mean, let's let her do it.
We just want to hear you do it.
Oh, you want me to say
Yeah, you got to tilt your head to the side.
Yeah,
this way or that way?
Anyway.
Either way.
Your choice.
Hold on, wait a minute.
I just want to know this evening. Is there one? Do we have one? I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna work. I'm just gonna laugh in my face now.
And then you roll to.
It was actually pretty good.
Then you roll to.
Okay.
But there is one.
But there is one.
There is one.
There is one. There is one.
There
And
is
there's an
one.
eyebrow that
You
goes
start
with.
lying. And last night the Lord told me that someone would be here.
You're
Yeah.
good.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Is that you?
Now, when you guys
You
ask
do
the
the
question,
countdown,
you know
too.
that there's one. You know that there's one, right? Like,
No,
Not
whenever
bad.
I say I know there's one, it's because God has said it to me.
okay.
That's right.
Like, I'm not gonna
That
go
means
there.
a lot to hear me say that. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
to hear me say that. Confirm that. Okay.
Yeah.
You can do the countdown. Start at 10.
Yeah, I got that from Cleveland. It works.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
It-
You counting down so that they can act right away as opposed to drawing it out.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Grissom said, then throw your head
Throw your
back.
head back. Now it's gonna have me.
It won't
Mercy, I
be
gotta put
long. I mean, Tasha, you preach now, don't you, Tasha?
I speak on occasion.
Oh
Are you,
yeah.
are you in a pulpit?
Would you say? Do I want
Are you in a pulpit?
right now?
No, when you speak occasionally, are you in a pulpit?
I am.
Do you use the Bible?
I do.
Then you're preaching.
Hey.
I just-
Hey, Tasha, I got some dates for 2025. We can talk afterwards.
it won't be long. I mean, the brethren will wise up and realize that you've got a woman in ministry, and just because she didn't come the normal way, that doesn't mean that she's not been called to minister. They'll recognize that at some point. Is Trevor listening? Trevor, you out there?
Is there prejudice
Okay. It's
or
time.
whatever when someone says, my friend and I just had this conversation, sister pastor or male nurse,
Yes.
right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And we were talking to say it actually came from somewhere, because those professions, if you will, are dominated by a certain gender. So
Yeah,
back in the day,
right.
it was women nurses all the time.
Yeah.
So now when there's a male nurse,
Yeah.
we find you a male
Or
nurse.
somebody says, some lady cop pulled me over.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yes.
I
Non-traditional.
never thought about that.
I just want to know, how did we get here?
I know, right?
Because
Prejudice.
that's where we go.
Yeah, we migrated over here. Now we need to migrate back so we can end this. But Tally, once again, thank you for
Privilege and pleasure.
opening us up. Great dialogue,
Hey.
great commentary in the chat. And thank you guys so much. Yep, xenophobia. Some of you are gonna go look that up again.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I remember that being one of my vocabulary words that I taught my students at Pine Forge. So it was a good flashback. Thanks for that, Tally.
Mm.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us on this Sunday evening. We loved having you, and we look forward to seeing you back here next Sunday, same time and same place.
Because we know there's one. Thank you, everybody.
They're waiting on you, Latasha. They're waiting on you.
Oh, I have to ask for another one? A multiple appeal? So next week, will there be one?
This week.
This week. Don't wait for next week. Before we go, can I get one? Just say me in the chat. Me in the chat. Just put me.
Oh, Lord.
All right, y'all. I'm not ready yet.
That's going to be
all right, y'all.
Very good. She had the pause, Tally. She had the
Somebody
pause.
said one. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
There's
We got one.
Hey, there's one.
Kristen said, say it from your
Say it
gut.
from your gut. I'll practice for next week, y'all. But all right, don't forget our homework for this week, guys. Curious, not judgmental. All right, guys. See ya. Have a great week.
All right.
She's so dying to say it. Just go ahead and say it.
No. I'm not gonna say it. Sable's listening, so I can't say it. But all right, guys, have a great.
just say it.
Just say
all right,
it.
we'll see you back here next Sunday. Because if it's Sunday,
It's
The day after
y'all gonna tell me to say it, and then I follow through. See?
It's the Upset Podcast.
Thank you. All right. Have a great week, everybody.
Okay.